Oh, okay. Leslie told us she'd be a little late, so we're going to start without her to have the public hearing, which is the first thing on the agenda for this evening. Welcome to all. The public hearing is hereby convened on the recommendation of the Conservation Advisory Council. We have a conservation easement for 256 Bruce Hill Road, which is the property owned by Dan Hoffman. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on the subject? It looks like Rhonda's got her hand up.
Yes, the only thing that I would like to say is that I support the easement and that I would hope that the town would spend a little bit more time, or the CAC would spend a little bit more time working to get easements on to contiguous parcels and parcels across the road. For example, the parcel that was for sale recently across the road. I think it's good to have contiguous parcels and make as big an easemented area as possible. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else like to comment? Teresa?
No, I'm here for
Okay. Ted? I see your hand up. Yep.
Yes, actually not a comment, but please a request. Could you swing the camera just a bit so we don't need to see the empty space behind Steve, but it would be really nice to see Pat.
Can I do that? I don't know. Can you swing the camera a little bit?
The other way. Yes, no, not quite that far.
Uh,
I will say, Ted, you have a better view than we do because looking at the screen from here, it's big glare. So
Oh.
we're all in the game together.
Yes, but you can look right up and see everyone a little bit more. Now Steve is out of the picture, as would Leslie be if she was there. A little more, one more like that. And one more.
There you go. How's that?
Maybe a hair more, Steve. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That makes such a difference in being able to appreciate the meeting.
We'll see whether it stays or not. It has a mind of its own, it seems. So did you have a comment or was it?
No, I didn't. I just wanted to ask that before you went too far into the meeting. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so there being no other comments, I think we'll close the public hearing and move on to the meeting. So there are additions to the agenda and a couple of deletions as well. The report from the planner, I can go, I think, under reports and presentation number 7. And the other, when there are now 4 items, can go to the end of the agenda that I typically do. The, I don't know that Dan's coming. Oh, yes, he's here.
He's here.
That's good. I know there will not be a report by Keith Shipman, but there are highway items to deal with, but not specifically as a report, so that could come. Obviously. Any others? No. Okay. Then privilege of the floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You'll need to come and use the mic and turn it on because Steve turned it off.
It needs to be turned back on.
Yeah. Yeah, it clicks towards you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
When you speak to it, you have to speak actually to the mic.
All right. So as you know, a couple of months ago, or seems that long ago, the Danby seniors had asked that I asked about some money. And you had asked that the board had asked that it be put in writing. And so the president has a letter that I'd like to read. And I also have copies for everyone. Okay. So dear Joel and members of the board, the Danby seniors have been an active group in the community for many years. We meet once a month to share a dish to pass lunch and enjoy one another's company, as well as guest speakers, bingo, and other activities. We also schedule day trips to surrounding areas, and for many of these might be the only time they get out on an outing. We are grateful to the town that we're included in the annual budget, which allows us to subsidize these trips. The cost has gone up over the years, making it difficult for some to pay and stretching our budget to 2 or maybe 3 trips a year. As you know, due to COVID, the seniors did not plan any trips during the 20 and 21 calendar years. And I'm writing to ask if the board could allocate some of the previously budgeted funds back to the seniors to help fray the cost and possibly add an additional trip. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Judy Cool, President of the Danby Seniors.
So is there a specific amount requested?
No, they're just asking if you can allocate some of the previously budgeted funds. If I had to guess, I would think they would appreciate like $3,000 because that would help them for another trip or 2.
Mhm. Add to the agenda.
Thanks.
If there's anything else you need from them, you can let me know.
Mhm.
They've kind of asked if I could be the bridge between.
Thanks. Thank you.
Going to add it to the agenda?
Sure. Woody.
There she is. Did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to know if the board found out anything about the sound ordinance from the.
Sorry.
From the police or.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Oh,
We'll talk about it.
and on the agenda, I think is the voting on the town supervisor or the highway supervisor and the town clerk.
It's on the agenda too.
Well, this has been done before, it's been turned down before. I don't know.
Why
I
don't,
feel that we have to do it again. Especially if the town board is pick a person, gives you a good job license. So that.
I don't think anybody in the Zoom audience heard what was just said.
what's that?
Nobody could hear Gary speaking. He was not using the mic.
Was the mic off?
I turned it back off.
Oh. Oh,
Gary, pull it a little further away. I don't know where the feedback's coming from. That was off right before.
There, it's on now.
It went,
yeah,
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Okay. Forgot what I said now. I think that both of the items I talked about are on the agenda. One is the appointing of the highway supervisor and town clerk, which that's been discussed and voted on before. It's been turned down twice before. Do we really feel a need that we have to have the control just to the 5 board members to pick these people when and take it away from the public? And also, I want to know if the town board found out anything about the noise ordinance from the local police department, sheriff's department, or state police, which I understand is both on the agenda. That's it.
Good, thanks. Judy.
Thank you for repeating that.
Ted,
Sure. Hi, folks. I have 3 items, and I think they're all reasonably brief. First one, 1 or 2 meetings ago, I made some comments, and one board member responded to them, and basically by saying that Ted didn't know all the facts, which in fact was the case. I didn't, because there was a board meeting called where facts were presented, but the public sort of didn't get the best chance to hear about the meeting beforehand. So you must take that in mind, that if you give us 3 minutes at the beginning of a meeting before the facts are presented, you can't really expect us to know everything. And really, it isn't very nice to criticize for that. Second, noise law. At this point, I'm not really too picky about what you do as far as a law goes, but I think it is very important for the town board to publish a procedure for what a resident might do if they have a noise complaint. Where do they go? Who do they go first, second? What action should they take? How should they describe it in order to get relief from their problem? Not knowing that is basically ground zero. It's as if you haven't even considered the matter at all. If the town board takes action beyond that, that's for you, but the populace has to know. And at third, I'd like to amplify what Gary just said. I don't know if it's a fact, but it is certainly a reasonable perception by the public that this attempt to exert control over the hiring and firing of what had been elected officials could possibly be in response to that uncomfortable situation that's been happening in town hall with regard to the clerk. Just as previously, there was a unfounded belief that there were no residents in Danby who were available to take the highway superintendent job, and that was obviously proved wrong. And I must put on the record here that the town board's history of making wise choices for when appointing people to empty elected seats. Well, I referred to an uncomfortable situation. You appointed the person who's in the uncomfortable situation. There's no reason to believe that the town board could do any better job than the voters. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't see anybody, so let us move on. Is there any correspondence, Janice?
No, there is not.
Okay. There are a couple of announcements, one of which, well, both of them really, we're waiting for David to come back. So why don't we skip over them and come back to them? Let's see. Which would then bring us to our representative, Dan Klein. Dan.
Hello there. I have several things to report tonight. First is that the Tompkins County Community Recovery Fund did grant some money to a Danby project. The organization is called Kuba International, KHUBA, and their project is called the Uhuru Creek Farm, and it's on the corner of Hornbrook Road and Nelson Road. And I just want to state what we did and didn't do. What we did was we granted about $74,000 for this project. However, we are well aware that this project in its current form doesn't comply with Danby zoning standards. And so our vote to fund this is not a vote to force you to do anything, even ask you to do anything. It's just supplying the money if this project is to go through. And there's three parts to the funding. One part is for planning, and we will release that money. So that's going to help them prepare documents and such in order to work with the town to see if there is a way to accommodate their project or not. The other two parts of the funding are for septic and water, and that funding will not be released unless the town approves the project. So I just wanted to lay all that out on the table, make sure everyone understood what that was about.
Did you say there were three things about it? Is it septic and water 2 and 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
First is planning.
Yeah, planning. I got that. Okay.
Okay, next thing. The county has done a lot of fits and starts in terms of planning for broadband internet for the county. The latest iteration of what we've been working on was a 9-month study that just recently concluded. And They issued several recommendations, and the one that seems to be getting advanced is to put out a request for proposals to internet service providers to build out a system that would supply broadband internet fiber to every unserved address in the county. That's approximately 1,200 addresses. I did not get a count yet how many of those are in Danby. A good chunk of it is in Danby, but I don't know the exact number. And that's the equivalent of 116 miles of fiber across the county. And the estimated cost of doing this would be $7 million. And as yet to know where that money would come from. There is a lot of state and federal grant money out there. So I don't expect that we'll have to pay anywhere near that locally, but that's the total cost of the project is estimated at $7 million. And this was my least favorite part of the whole thing. And the estimate is that it's going to take 3 to 5 years to build out 100%. And this plan, this study, and this option will be presented to the Tompkins County Council of Governments on May 25th. And after that organization gives feedback, the legislature could vote on this as soon as June 6th. So I've been in touch with Joel about all this because I know, well, I just wanted to make sure he knew about it, and he helped me to understand how TCOG needed a bigger role in this. So so that's why the timeline is such as it is. Another thing I want to report is about foreclosures. This is something that I like to keep track of in the county. At this point, we're getting very close to the final date when properties will be foreclosed on if they have not paid taxes. And there's only 8 of them countywide. That's a pretty low number. And I look at that number for 2 reasons. One is just because of the actual human cost that represents, you know, in terms of people losing their houses. Nobody likes to see that. But also I look at it as kind of a bellwether or a statistic about which one way of measuring how the county is doing economically, and 8 is a low number. So, you know, that's good news in the sense that it's not higher. And of those 8, 0 are in Danby. So I just wanted to report that.
Okay.
And then the last thing is, if you don't mind me slipping in something a little more personal, is that the plant exchange is this coming Saturday, May 20th, 31st annual. It's from noon to 3 at the Danby Fire Department Pavilion on Route 96B. That is my report tonight.
And we can exchange all the dead plants for after tonight. Dan, can I ask a quick question?
As many as you'd like.
Regarding the internet, I think you just said 1,200, was that unserved residences? And when you say unserved, do you mean unserved with broadband or no internet at all?
No fiber to those addresses.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Fiber cable, right?
I believe they're saying fiber, but I don't know. I'm not sure what to say. That was what the term they used, because I asked the same question. What does that mean? And they said fiber. So I'm not sure what to say.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not, I'm sure it does not include those who have cable, because there's a lot more people who have cable who don't have any other, who don't have fiber.
Okay.
We're talking about the whole county or Danby? Whole
The whole county. I don't know the number for Danby, but Danby is one of the highest unserved places in the county. The whole southern part of the county, Newfield, Danby, Caroline, have the worst coverage.
Right. And so we haven't yet seen the report. I was told, I got an email from Nick Hemholt this morning indicating that it will be shared with TCOG membership when the agenda goes out on Friday. But some questions that come to mind had to do with whether or not whether this is going to end up being a gift to the internet service providers, where we install we contract to have the fiber installed and then it's theirs. So in any event that we ultimately decide to do a fiber network that would serve the county, this is the hardest part to extend service to. And if we give that part away, then we end up having to duplicate it if we were going to put our own fiber network in. So I would want to know whether or not it could be done, and then we still own it, they get to use it until if we were to do something else, we would come back to us, or whether that was even thought about.
Well, Joel, I'm looking forward to you asking those questions directly from the people that wrote the report and coming back with some good recommendations.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a lively discussion on Thursday. Ted, I'll let you ask. a
Sure.
question.
Actually, I had 3 questions also about internet, and 2 of them have already been touched on. The first one was going to be, are you using the federal definition for broadband? As opposed, but you've said that it's just that there is no fiber. There is a slight difference. For example, I have this nice connection through Clarity Connect, but it doesn't meet the federal standard for broadband. That was one, you've sort of answered it. The second question was, who is going to operate this if you're going to install it? And that's sort of what Joel was asking. Is there any plan for how the actual system would operate? And yes, you've answered that. You'll probably ask it that question. The third one is, between point A and point B, point A being where there is fiber and point B being a residence where there is no fiber, there might, the county's fiber might have to pass along a route that includes people who do have broadband by whatever definition is chosen. Would the county's fiber be available to make drops to them so that they could get away from providers who are perhaps less reliable than the providers who will make use of the county fiber? That's the 3.
That's a question that I can't answer, and I will try to ask it and get it answered. Joel, also, if you could make a note of that and try to help me get that question asked, okay?
And I might add, Ted, you could come to the meeting next week if you'd like.
Just let me know when and where it is. I'm sure I could find out, but it would be easier if someone actually announced it.
We'll be in person at the legislative chambers. And I think there's a Zoom option as well, not for us members, because if we can, we're going to have this being an in-person meeting where we normally would meet remotely, because there's a proposed revision to the bylaws, which requires an in-person meeting to entertain. So that's at 3 o'clock next Thursday.
That'll be Thursday, the 25th.
Fifth.
Should be an interesting day then.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Anything else, Dan?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks,
David, we skipped over announcements because you weren't quite here yet. And your report is on the agenda is immediately following. So basically, you're on.
Hi, folks. Announcements. We have scheduled Hamlet meetings for the 24th and the 25th, the 24th for West Danby, the 25th for Central Danby, both at fire halls, both at 7 p.m. We originally discussed a dish to pass. We decided today that it's kind of too much to ask at this point with short notice, and we're not going to do that. The goal of those meetings is twofold. One is to kind of hone in on what grants we want to pursue. Obviously, we don't expect people to understand the grants or to know exactly what they are. So focus is going to be conversation about the values and goals for the hamlets. And from that, it'll give us some information, give our consultants some information about what things we can pursue in the short and longer term. So that's the announcement. When you say report, are you talking about the short-term rental survey? Are we ready to get into that?
Yep.
Okay. So I shared with you through the agenda, and there's 2 links there. One is a link to a very ugly table that is all of the information, and one is the link to a less ugly report that was sent to the planning board. The difference between the 2 of those is that the one for the planning board included everything that was in by the 10th, which was our deadline for closing it. And I spent time making a prettier document. And then the other one includes several things that came in since then. So the numbers are slightly different. I don't think that the sentiment is broadly different. There was nothing particularly different or special about the 5 or 6 that came in after, although they each have their own, points of view. I'm wondering if it would make sense do you want to put some of it on the screen? Do you want to take a look at it there?
Yeah, I mean,
I think
it was really,
It was pretty nice to see it last night.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Because it
Why
went,
don't I pull up
grab a chair.
So I'm going to talk while I get this up, since I just came in. I'll gotta get into the meeting. I would say overall, we had a very strong or broad response, over 160, closer, over 160 respondents to our survey. That's a very good rate of return for something like that for our size of a community. I think that we had, the fairly clear message from it is that most people either want no regulation or pretty light regulation when it comes to talking about short-term rentals. The specifics, of course, differ from person to person. Let me get in the Zoom here. And, we had a lot of people saying, don't touch anything, don't mess with my property rights. We had a few people saying, there's some really huge problem that really needs to be addressed. And we had a lot of people saying, I can see some concerns, and I also have concerns about going too far. So I think that's a good general description. Janice, could you make me a co-host?
Yes, I haven't seen you come in yet.
Oh, I'm in.
Oh, there you are.
Just
I see you.
a
Sorry.
second. Yep. All the buttons. Here we go. All right. So we're up to 166 responses. I'd like to thank Cindy for going through the difficult work of typing in all of the paper ones so that we can view everything in one system. So I can grant any of the town board access to this if you want to go through it in more detail. You'll notice the difference between the ugly all-inclusive results and the nice ones that I gave the planning board are that I took these graphics, like you can see here on the screen, and you'll notice that they shorten all of the titles. And in the Google system, you can hover and it will give you that full information. For the planning board, I went through the trouble of remaking these, but it was quite a hassle, and I really don't think it's useful to redo it all to include the 5 that came in after. But on the screen here, you can see the totality of the results. Almost everyone who responded was a resident of Danby. You have a whole bunch of the individual expressions of what kinds of negative and positive impacts people have seen. A lot of people had a lot to say about positive impacts, or that they'd had no negative impacts. Again, some people said they've had some very negative impacts, or a fair number of people said, I have concerns about something that's coming. Nothing has happened yet, but I know something terrible could be on the horizon. When we get to the question of how should the town handle short-term rentals, we gave people basically 3 options and a no preference. 49.7% of people, the plurality, said allow short-term rentals with no regulations. 46% said allow short-term rentals with regulations. Less than 2%, or about 3 people, said we should ban short-term rentals in town. The next question was, if the town was to create some regulations, what kinds of regulations should they consider? The highest number of responses was there should be no limitations. I will note that a lot of people filled out the survey, and in this question, they just checked that, and then they didn't check things like, if you think there should be no regulations, then you probably think that short-term rental should be allowed on any property. But there are people who said no regulations and didn't click those other ones. So some of those questions about like a less restrictive option are somewhat undercounting the opinion. But again, the highest number was that there should be no regulations. The next highest was requiring operators to register with the town. And behind that, requiring operators to collect and pay lodging taxes. Behind that, requiring operators to notify neighbors and leave information about who to contact. Under that, we get to the question of, should it be allowed on every property, only where an owner lives, or only on really large parcels? In that kind of three-way question, the largest contingent said it should be allowed on any property, even if an owner doesn't live there. 46 people said it should only be allowed on property where the operator lives, and only one person thought that they should only be allowed on large properties. 34 people said that most properties should be allowed at least one short-term rental in addition to a home. Other results, 36 people said that short-term rentals should be inspected, and there was a fair number of comments in the additional things to tell the board or experiences that people have said that alluded to people thinking that inspections would be a good idea, and also people wondering who and how expensive that could be, which is a good question. 34 people, we already said that should be allowed in addition to a home. 26 people said the operator should be required to get a license, which I think is a little interesting, with 63 people saying the operator should register with the town, which is pretty similar. There is a slight difference. Licenses are revocable and registration is just notification. Not sure that people probably get or know that nuance, but that is a slight difference.
Before you go on, you mentioned something yesterday, which I thought was interesting about some planner and elsewhere in the county mentioning when you had raised the question that licensing was suggested as a way of dealing with larger scale.
I think what I said is that there's kind of a growing thought that it's a good idea to not define short-term rental as a use, but as a business that requires a license, being that you can revoke a license, but you can't revoke an allowed use. You could have an allowed use and have some conditions applied to that use, but it's much easier and simpler to have a license that has to be renewed every so often, and if you don't follow the rules, you don't get the license. It also takes it out of the kind of rights that come with land use designations.
Is there an option? I was thinking about this. Is there an option, or could there be an option to require licensing if somebody had more than, say, 5 units?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. 34 people said limit the number of rental days in a year. It's one of the smaller ones. Only 14 limit to only parts of the town. 19 said limit the number of short-term rentals. 25 people said require the operator to respond within 30 minutes. Some people who said that also added notes that maybe 30 minutes is a bit too short, but the idea of requiring a prompt response was a good idea. The next section, we asked people about issues that could be addressed through regulation and whether they thought that was very important, somewhat important, or not important. You can kind of hash through here, but what I think is interesting is where very important is much higher than not important, or vice versa. So in regulate noise, that was slightly more very important than not important. Trash was the one that people said was the most important. The most people said that addressing trash and litter was very important. Let's see, parking impacts was one where not important was significantly higher than very important. Traffic impacts as well.
It's interesting.
Increases of the short-term lodging supply, and nobody really cares about that. Advertising and signs, again, not important, was much higher than important. Let's see, ability to get quick response to concerns, fire safety, and regulating special events all had more people saying it was very important than people saying it's not important. Limiting the number of consecutive days, way more people saying it's not important than saying it's important or somewhat important, or those two combined. So definitely not much appetite there. And then decreased long-term affordable housing supply. Slightly more people said it wasn't important than very important, but if you take the very important and somewhat important together, they're more than the not important. So there's a lot of ways you can break these down. We asked people what else they'd like to tell the town board. This is one you'll kind of just have to read through. You will get an earful. Lots of people gave you a paragraph or a couple paragraphs. And we have a whole 99 emails of people who'd like to know what's going on as this goes forward. So most people, all but a few, were willing to put their names. A few people only put their first name. I think 3 people didn't put their name. Reviewing the addresses, you know, there were a few addresses that multiple people who live there responded. Again, we kind of said that was okay. Different people who live at a house may disagree. There wasn't any address that had a seemingly unreasonable number of responses. I don't recall there being more than 3 or 4 for any address. So I think the results reflect real humans giving their real opinions. Yeah. So do you have any questions about how that came out, or turn it over to you to discuss?
I don't have a question, but, well, I guess I do. Is this the first survey that we've done that had a sort of digital option?
I think so.
No, we did some during the zoning update. Yeah. Remember, we did the one about commercial, what kind of commercial things people were willing to allow and how open they were, and we were all kind of blown away by how open they were. Yeah.
And do you know approximately the ratio of digital responses versus paper responses?
That'd be a good question for Cindy. I believe that more than half were digital.
Okay.
But yeah, I would be surprised if less than a third were paper.
I mean, just from my perspective, it's nice to have, you know, the graphs, the breakdown.
Yeah.
Are these results available for the public to see or just the town board?
They are all linked on the agenda on the webpage. Except I redacted people's names and addresses.
On the agenda. I don't have the updated one either. Yes. That's what mine is.
Right, David, after 11 is good.
It was also on yesterday's planning board agenda, if you want to look there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know if you're comfortable speaking off the cuff. but
That's what I do all the time.
I'm curious what your response is, what your thoughts are.
I think kind of what I summarized while I was getting set up, that I think there's a few things that it shows. It shows that there's a lot of people who want nothing done. There's a fair amount of people who are open to regulation but want it to be a light touch. And I think the amount of people who want a very strict regime is extremely limited. There was a fair number of responses both in the what have you experienced and what else you want the town board to know, that said, basically, it's mostly a good thing. We should allow it. It's reasonable to have some things to prevent, the worst outcomes. And also people kind of responding to the weirdness of the way it's currently set up, where there's no restrictions on renting a whole house, but there are restrictions on renting part of the house.
An accessory building
Right.
or a tent or something, which is something,
Yeah.
I know a year ago, we were looking at trying to change. Some
Mhm.
people could do that.
Yeah, and there were a few responses that mentioned that as well. Including some that talked about how that kind of renting is the only kind that doesn't take away from housing supply.
Right, yeah.
And we did, I remarked when I took the survey myself, that this is something we didn't really cover very well, was what people thought about that kind of short-term rental. As you're going through, it sort of puts you in the mind that we're talking about people renting their houses, or rooms in their houses, as opposed to, an RV park in the parking lot or a tent in the backyard, or, a campground. It's just not what comes to mind as you were taking it. And so the responses don't really give us any clear indication how people feel about that. And it's an important part of what we're not currently regulating or allowing. So it's happening to some degree, but we're not leaning on people because they're doing it. But technically, the way zoning is set up, as you probably know, and if it's not allowed, if it's not specifically mentioned, it's not allowed, unless it's a customary use, and a campground is not a customary use of a residential property. So it's basically not allowed as we currently have our zoning structured. And if we want to accommodate it, then we should, make some changes to allow for it and decide how we're going to do it. The planning board asked last night, and I didn't have a good answer, was, what's the town board going to do about this? Because we had, recall that the planning board asked to review the results of the survey before they would weigh in on to what degree they wanted to be involved. And they had a discussion last night, and they asked, how the town board didn't handle this, and my response was, I don't know, because we haven't talked about it yet. We'll talk about it tomorrow night, which is now. So I guess we need to decide how we're going to deal with it. As far as their willingness to participate, my sense, and correct me if you get a different one, David, is that they weren't keen to be a participating member of any committee we might create to come up with a way of changing regulations. They wanted to be able to attend on a rotating basis and report back to the planning board, which any of the us who were there last night could easily do. So I'm not sure that what would be gained by having them do that, but depending on what we come up with, there may be some interest in participating. And it did raise the question of whether we should, how we're going to move forward with this. I think that this was precipitated by the need to sort of rationalize what we do about short-term rentals, and that need is still there. I don't think we should just sort of back off and say, well, just leave things the way they are. The way they are is not very satisfactory. We don't address the possibility of tents and RVs and whatnot, other than having, family gatherings where you're not charging people. And neither do we have a situation where if you're renting a room in your house, you're a tourist home, but if you're renting the whole house, you're just renting your whole house and there's no regulation, which to me doesn't make any sense. So either we should lighten up on the tourist home designation. Maybe we could do the same thing with that, where if a certain threshold number of rooms or number of units kicks you into a different category of needing a license or something. But that's something that could be talked about in the committee if you want to do it that way.
I think I understood the planning board slightly different. I do think they're interested,
Well, I didn't say.
but they didn't want, I don't think there was a big interest in it being entirely their project. I think they were interested in participating in the process, not just observing, but participating, but maybe not having one person be the only person, being able to rotate, but not having it take over their entire agenda.
Mhm.
I thought it was closer with the.
Okay.
And that, they were, worried a little bit about number of meetings and,
Yeah.
how much time it was gonna, take. But I came away thinking that at least a couple of them were very interested.
How we do it. Yeah. I think that realistically, any committee would be interacting with David on what to do. And the reality of the matter is that David ended up doing the front line share of the work to implement whatever we brainstormed in order to bring a proposal forward. So I can't see us, spending a lot of time as a committee, like wordsmithing a proposal. I don't think it'll take that much time with that many meetings. I could be wrong, but.
Depends on whether or not you all agree.
To try not to, take up, all of Dave's time, and maybe we could come up with a small committee of the board and some of the planning boards and divvy up different, okay, what does it mean? What would it look like if we wanted people to be licensed? Should, and
Yeah.
what would that involve? And should it be, you have to get a license if you've got 5 beds or 5 units. But maybe there's a way to divide up sort of tasks for different people to be looking up different options. Camping. I've heard horror stories about the campgrounds, that, you find next door in the lot next to you, when there's, 20 campers, who, but, people have tents and other small, somebody else could look at that issue. But I don't know if there's any way we can not have David have to do the whole thing from scratch. And I know he's got resources and.
Right. That's where we
that
have
we
a
could all-
professional planner on staff.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, about things different towns have done. Some of it's different, a lot of it is, a lot of places are things, on beaches or on lakes or water. But there are some smaller towns that have played with these things.
Yeah, and sometimes the smaller towns are resort areas and they have this
Yeah,
issue
well-
to deal with.
Yeah, but that's also different though.
Yeah, it is.
It's also, towns that are, like inundated with, tourists, at certain times of the year. That's not, I don't think that's Danby's problem. We have shorter periods, college graduations and things like that, but which is different.
There are things that might impact it, and that's the idea of having that convention center downtown. that could, because I don't know how expensive that will be for people to stay, so people might want to come to conventions and do something. And the other thing that when you
Yeah.
said about the tenting, it reminded me that we would need to make sure we separate out the whole, and that it falls under the noise question for some people. Some people have family reunions and they
Yeah.
bring their people come and they sleep in tents
Mhm.
at the property, and that's not, they're not paying. I mean,
Right.
would that be one of the things that
Those
to
are just
call it
guests.
short-term rental? It has to
They're not
cost
renting.
money.
You're not renting it
Yeah.
if you're not charging.
Right.
Yeah.
But people don't, people have to know that that's not the same thing. So if they see a bunch of tents at somebody's house,
Yeah,
Well,
all of a
that's-
sudden to say
Yeah,
something.
right.
yeah. When my family comes, we put the tent out, and we stay in the tent. We've done that at Christmas.
Really?
Yeah,
An insulated tent?
no,
Just an insulated sleeping bag.
you just don't get up for any reason at all.
Yeah, so how should we proceed? Should we create a committee to pursue it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As to how we handle it?
Well, I was a little late.
We did.
Oh.
but,
But, well, I don't know if you came in after that, right?
She did.
Yeah, she was a
Yeah.
little late, she missed that.
Well,
But, you'd like to comment, and Ted
Yeah.
would, Ted would also, but,
well, here it
yeah, sure, why don't you come up?
Wait.
Hopefully you can hear me. My mouth isn't working the way it's supposed to. I have Bell's palsy and hopefully it'll
no.
be temporary. So I've obviously been concerned about this. We're celebrating 10 years of having a bed and breakfast / short-term rental. And it's been extremely positive and also very necessary for us to meet our expenses, particularly in terms of our outrageous property taxes. I think the concern that I've had as I've heard all of this stuff start brewing is, I guess I don't understand why it doesn't appear that anybody has really gotten into any of the state and county laws. There was part of the survey was talking about the county tax or the room tax and saying that it goes to arts. It doesn't go to arts.
Tourism.
It supports the Visitors Bureau and tourism. I called the finance department to confirm that today. That is definitely something that should be a requirement. It's a law. If you are renting something out for occupancy, there is an occupancy tax at the county level. So, I would also suggest that somebody who's, when you're working on all this, that people should talk to the Visitors Bureau, because they actually advertise for free for everyone who is registered to collect the tax. The Visitors Bureau, Visit Ithaca. Yep. In fact, they were here at a meeting recently during the day. And I would encourage you to look, at other towns and counties and see how they license short-term rentals. And I think really the best thing that could be done by the town board or by the planning board or whoever is to develop best practices. Obviously you have to have a certificate of occupancy. That's a bare minimum. If you require the tourist home special permit, then that's something else. If you're going to do something else, just put together a packet. We pay double our insurance because part of the year we're renting out, and so we have insurance, we have website, we have helpers that help us. Therefore, we have to have workers' comp.
Mhm.
which is about 20% of what we're paying the people. We just pay for the insurance.
Yep.
So, I think anybody who's doing this, if they don't have an eye to getting good reviews on Airbnb, VRBO, or wherever else they're doing it, then they won't be getting them. And, I think it's a quality thing. We want quality in Danby. And, I would also suggest that, we've had to make our place as wonderful as possible to serve our guests and to make them happy. And we just had a wonderful group leave for the Cornell Law this past weekend. They had a delightful time. They said it was just a terrific, wonderful weekend for them. And that's a good reflection on Danby. I would say, and I'm looking forward to the part in the agenda that's talking about the derelict homes and the other things that are just embarrassing to drive by on 96B and elsewhere. And that, I think the town would be much better served if we could focus on that. And I would also say that because there is a lot of town spirit in a good way, that there might be some volunteer activity to help people who need help with their homes to improve them. So, I just would really want to encourage that it is a spirit of helping people, helping people who need to make their tax bills. And then, every time you you try to improve and make your house look better, then you get taxed more, So there's just all sorts of, things that are discouraging. And, I find this a little discouraging that this has become a focus when it seems like there should be a lot of other focuses. So, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, Ted, briefly.
Of course. I'm really addressing the numbers that were in the report that David presented. You might call this lies, damn lies, and statistics, and George Santos. I think more interesting in that round chart, pie chart, about who thought this was a good idea versus a bad idea. I think the crosstabs would be much more important than that pie chart, because the 7% difference between one side and another, ignoring the tiny pie slices, is oddly enough exactly the number of people who are not Danby residents. So what the answer that you should be looking for is people who are Danby residents. You might even want to try and unskew the effects of people who don't live in Danby, but want to be a short-term landlord in Danby. It really would change the results. And the second observation there is in the vertical bar charts. I understand what David was doing. It's a nice quick answer, but you really have to consider that just on the average, 2/3 of the people either were concerned a lot or a little about it, and only 1/3 are not concerned about that issue at all. So in fact, if you look at it and ask the question, are you concerned about this issue? All of those bar charts, well, at least I think it was all, indicate a concern from 1/2 to 2/3 of the people or more. So there are different ways to look at those results, and I think that a more thorough examination of the results is appropriate. Thanks.
Sure. My takeaway, though, looking at it, was that there's broad support for minimal regulation. And I even see it as something of a support for lightening up on some of what we've already got in place, like the tourist home part.
You could be correct, Joel, but I think that if you did crosstabs to see which groups support what, I think it might open some eyes. And by the way, I should have said, I'm sorry, I don't want to take your time, but if.
So you're interrupting now and out of order.
Thanks, but please let me say.
I do want to note that the reason for this thing in the first place was not because people thought it was the most important thing around, but the fact that the law itself is a little screwed up. And rather than fixing a little piece of it, the goal was to open it up and let everybody respond. So it's much better than fixing a little piece and ignoring everybody's opinion in the process. So that's the purpose for this. It wasn't to screw anyone around.
Yeah, I understand, and I just want to say that as far as I know, from everything I've heard,
If I could,
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
can.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I would recommend that the board take the information that I assume people who didn't get the planning board agenda may not have read it all. You know, take this as you now have had the information presented to you. You can go and read all of the comments, and I'm not sure you need to decide what you're going to do in this meeting.
No, I don't, well, other than maybe create a committee to decide, to look at the information and propose what we do about it. Which is what I would think might be the logical next step. We were at the point of thinking, who would be on this committee? Well, I'm willing. I mean, are you willing? You willing to? Yeah, we have to be sure, right? Because you're only going to be with us until what?
Sounds like an impetus for doing something,
Sooner than later.
well, or to doing something where it's not all wordsmithing, it's the basics, it's the bullet points and.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's the broad outline of what we want to accomplish? We could have more than two of us on the committee. In which
I
case,
think it's fine to have them do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote, I would vote.
Supposed to have them do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that they can bring back a report to us. That's what I think. We have lots of information and there, we did a lot of.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Loud.
Yeah. Well, because I just walk away.
I know, that's why I'm thinking maybe just let some people who don't just love going to meetings do something expediently.
Yeah. Well, you know, if it's.
I mean, we could get together with Dave and, do a list of tasks or
Yeah,
issues
right.
that we want to look at.
Right.
You know, I mean, you don't have to be involved in everything, Joel.
No, sure, I don't have to be
But-
involved in everything. I'm not.
Yeah. No. Just to get going, I mean, just to get moving. Yeah.
So I'm sensing a motion to create a committee of two, Steve and Leslie,
With David.
with David, yes, of course. What
David.
about, do we want to invite planning board members to participate?
Yeah, okay, I can ask, or David could ask if anybody wants to, we could figure
The
out a
report that
time
we
that we
created
could
a
meet
committee
and
to-
see if anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To review and consider possible actions.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, I would also like to, I mean, not, Kim is here and anybody else who's worried, that at least myself, and I'm sure other people are interested in protecting thriving businesses that already, occur in Danby. There certainly aren't many of them. And this effort isn't because there have been complaints about those, specific places, at least that I know of, in Danby. I want to assure that, I mean, if nothing else, we could reach out to those people and like Kim gave us some suggestions, and ask for more detailed suggestions, what would be helpful, what wouldn't be helpful. I want to be clear that I'm not interested in trying to make things harder or less successful than they are.
No, I agree. And it's interesting because if you look at the comments, there's a lot of comments along the lines of, don't tell me what I can do on my property. And I think that people misunderstand the intent. For myself, at least, the paramount concern would be someone who isn't from around here at all, just buying up a chunk of property and putting a ridiculous number of units into an existing house. And then not having insurance, not having any sort of, you know, smoke detectors or anything.
There was an interesting comment at the planning board member meeting yesterday from, I think it was Colleen, because she's connected to the real estate community,
Right.
that we may have peaked in interest in this particular form of rental because it was spurred in part by the pandemic. And there was a surge in interest in when people were first getting stir crazy and wanting to go on vacation, but they didn't want to be close to anybody else. So the idea of, you know, renting a place that's by itself and apart was particularly attractive. And as we're getting more comfortable with getting together in crowds and, you know, conventions are starting to reappear, that kind of stuff, there's less of that. And there may be, there's at least a flattening in the market. The statistics, I think, that were presented at the Realtor annual snapshot indicated as much that the phenomenon, although there was a surge, seems to have at least plateaued and maybe even come back a little bit down. While at the same time, hotel occupancy has resumed, picked up again. So it may be we may be worrying about something that's not going to be an issue. The other thing that was reported in the Realtors conference was that here in Tompkins County, at least, the number, unless you have a really choice location, you know, you're near Cornell, your opportunity to have a lot of days occupied is limited. You know, the average number of days that the short-term rentals are used per year is you remember the fraction? Was it's yeah, it's
available.
Yeah, and what it indicated was that if somebody were buying a place specifically to use that way, they'd have to be in a pretty good location in order to have it pencil out. And I don't know that anybody's building places. People are buying places, at least in some of those prime locations. But some of the concerns that were expressed in the survey results that, you know, people might build places just to have them for that purpose. It's pretty unlikely. But,
Well, you know, there's all sorts of ideas out there.
yeah, I mean, there aren't very many people building
I
anything.
mean, I know people, you know, I mean, I know situations that would argue that that's not necessarily true in different locations. You know, and I know my family, I mean, they like to rent places, you know, like things, because then everybody can stay together,
Yeah,
you know, and they
sure.
can, you know, hang out in a room and then go off to bedrooms instead of down a hotel hallway, or,
Right.
and they can have access to a kitchen, you know, I mean, there's other reasons, and I mean, that was even before COVID started,
Yeah, that's one of the attractions.
that it was,
And that's,
Yeah.
and that's also supported by statistics that most of these short-term rentals are whole houses.
yeah.
So, let's see.
Anyway,
So I was in the
so
midst of,
we'll figure
I
out.
was in the midst of making a motion to create a committee of two. Leslie, well, it's a committee of two plus, well, with a planner basically advising. And if planning board member or members, if they're interested in joining, to explore options and bring back some suggestions. Good discussion? Okay, Janice?
Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat, to create a committee with Leslie? Was there somebody else that's stepping up? Oh, okay, sorry. Steve Weisberg. David, and then members from the planning board to explore options. And bring back some, okay,
Words.
never mind, I got it, and bring back some suggestions. I'm ready. Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
yes. Okay, so backing up. That was kind of a long report. Yeah. And Keith isn't coming, but there is highway stuff to deal with, but later on the agenda.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
meeting minutes. And we have a bunch.
I did, you know, I got warrants and stuff done this morning. There was only one meeting minutes on there this morning, so.
But there's all the ones that were there, there were all the ones that were there last time.
But I'd have to look through them all again because I don't know if changes have made, been made. So that's right.
Well, I mean, that will always be the case. Because last
Then
time. you said
I need them before. Yeah.
We had them before.
This morning.
No. For this meeting, we need them before 12 hours before the meeting. And that's what they were here, 12 hours before, along with the warrants,
They
which
were,
took forever.
they were linked to the agenda today. They've
Right.
been in work drive since forever. And they were in work drive since the last meeting, and we agreed that we would look at them because any change that we made would be done in draft, and what it could called, what it called.
Track
Draft.
change.
And if anybody had any problems or wanted to make additional changes, that they would do so that when we came back to this meeting, we could vote on some of them, because they were there last time in track changes.
So if
but
I looked at it-
we haven't had time to look at them.
So if
let's-
I looked at it this morning, Joel, what, that could mean, I could look at it this morning and then you could make changes.
right.
This afternoon and
But I didn't.
But we don't know
I don't
that.
know
We
that.
don't know that. We need a deadline. We need a deadline because these are going to the public. And the public needs to know what we're voting on. And if it goes to the public and then it gets changed 3 or 4 times after that, nobody knows what we're voting on.
Yeah, I just need to know that I'm looking at final copy and that Catherine's not going to make comments after I've spent time looking through it and going, yes, I approve that. She could make a change that I wouldn't want.
Did
and
anybody
so-
make any changes since the last meeting to any of the minutes, other than May 2nd, which we got since the last meeting?
I sent suggestions in on an email on corrections that needed to be made.
Since the last meeting?
Yes,
But did you see, Pat said she sent them an email,
yes,
so she didn't go to track,
Who did you send them?
everybody.
Okay, so everybody has them then?
but they're not in the track changes. So what you're suggesting is.
Well, what I suggested and what I thought we agreed to last time was that we would make our changes to the minutes in work drive, in track changes, so that we could all see what was being proposed. And
Okay.
generally what happens when I make changes, Janice takes a look at them, and if she's okay with them, she simply incorporates them.
Right.
But that's a committee of 2. I think that's the
know.
problem. And I think
Well,
the
I mean,
thing
it could
is,
be a committee of 5.
it could be.
Yeah, and
But
she-
right now, it isn't working well, and I think what we're hearing is this is what you're suggesting, and you want us to do this, and so far, it isn't happening well
Well, I
enough.
mean, okay,
That's all.
what I want is a way out of this now.
I totally agree with you.
Get the minutes approved, reviewed and approved.
What I need is like a date when there'll be no more changes to that track thing.
Before a vote.
And that, the next day after that deadline, I'll look at the minutes and
Okay.
I'm not gonna make any changes though.
Has
I'll do what
everybody,
Pat,
has everybody now looked at the minutes that are up to May 2nd?
I looked at them a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
December, the first December is
And I
still
had
missing.
problems with all
Yeah,
of them.
we're still missing 6 of them, but
And I still have problems with some of the last I looked. And I've looked at all of them, except the one, of course, is not there. And there are still problems with all of them,
Well,
most of
yeah.
them, many of them.
Well, then, suggest. fix
I
it.
did.
Okay.
So
Um,
I can say, Pat, that your email from Monday, May 1st with corrections to the November 16th, the December 21st, the January 18th, the February 7th, and the March 7th, which basically included the date is wrong, you misspelled about, those have all been corrected.
Okay, so what you're saying, Janice, is that Pat's suggestions have been incorporated,
Yes.
okay?
Okay, then I'll.
And everybody else, mine have been. Has anybody else not looked at them and have other changes that they want to make?
I've had made suggestions and that they weren't, a couple things were changed, but not all of them.
Oh, okay, so how do we get out there?
I don't think you've looked at them since the last meeting, Leslie.
Okay, I'll look, I just said I didn't. So I'll look at them again.
Okay, so.
They've got PS changes in there now. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't want to spend time looking at something and.
and then have it changed
And
afterwards.
then having, a change be made and then I'm approving something I didn't even read. So we need to have, the track stuff is nice up to a point, but we need to like do okay, we have the track thing for a week and then it closes down.
Yeah,
And then that's what we look at.
right,
that's
which I
what
thought was
we
what we were gonna
approved.
do, but.
That's not
then,
true. It keeps
um,
changing all the time.
I would like to remind everybody that all of these minutes are posted on the website. They are available for the public to view them. They all
Yeah.
have a big draft watermark
Right.
on them. So
Right,
that means that in draft form, minutes can change. Documents change in draft form all the time. The minute that it's no longer in draft, it will not change.
What we need
the way
is that
documents
on the agenda, what we have on the agenda that gets sent out to everybody, including the public and board members, is what we vote on. That means it shouldn't be changing after it's on the agenda and linked to the agenda. Has nothing to do with the website.
that's certainly true. The trouble is that the links
Those-
up.
those-
a couple days.
But these are on the website. All of these are up and available. And the fact that you're piddling over tiny typos and refusing to quote unquote approve them is, a waste of everybody's time.
So maybe we could, because there's a lot of minutes, maybe we could choose like just the 5 most recent to start with. And then have a comment period, say for the next week. And then after those have been incorporated, maybe Janice, you could just send out the links and say, okay, I've incorporated all the changes. Here are these 5 minutes now. And then we can not change that and look at them and vote on them at the next meeting.
Right. And to be clear, I mean, these are my minutes and you can suggest changes and I do not have to incorporate all of the changes. So some I do, like typo corrections. Those are great. Some I do not, where people put in bias and other inflated responses.
Yeah, but if you're not going to, then I think if where you disagree, then I think it should go to the board to say whether we.
That's not actually how minutes work.
It does, the board can correct the minutes if the minutes are incorrect.
Yeah.
And when minutes are incorrect, they are having to do with incorrect dates, incorrect bulleting, but they are not incorrect in the statements that I do have transcripts of all of these meetings and I am able to put in the correct information. So what is incorrect according to the board may not be incorrect according to the facts.
Well, I mean, it should be, if it's a matters of fact, the record is the record. Once you go back and listen to the recording and answer any uncertainty about whether or not, if they're factual or not.
This is why I was using minutes that were briefer because we have audio recordings and we have transcripts. So
That's
all
true.
of those triangulating modems of transmitting a record are able
Yeah.
to give you the true and accurate events as it occurred.
Yep, I understand. And then that's certainly a rationale for minimal minutes, which is what you've kind of gone to doing.
My understanding of some of the frustrations are that from time to time, some people are concerned that the sentiment is not accurately portrayed in the written word. Is that accurate for what?
Yeah, and
you
as
said?
Janet points out, that's a matter of, it's really hard to do minutes. I mean,
Right.
give people credit, because, when you report, you inevitably introduce some bias because you choose what to report.
Correct.
And even though it may be factual, it may be, you can distort the picture because you're reporting fact A, but ignoring fact B, both of which are relevant to the sentiment, if you will, of what, what happened.
Right.
So, we could quibble over, is this an accurate statement? It might be accurate, but it also might be misleading.
Right.
So when you go to minimal minutes, which Janice has gone to doing, you're basically saying, here's what was proposed and here's the action. If you want to know what's behind it, listen to the recording or watch the video. You can take your own take on it. That's objective and it's factual. There's no quibbling about it. We've asked, in the guidance that the board has provided to the clerks, we've asked for more than that. We've asked for, basically a synopsis of what were the points that were made, beyond just what was the outcome. And we get that for the planning board, we get it for the BZA, but we don't get it for the town board. And it's not my preference. I don't think it's our preference either. But, to the extent that if we get more, then we can quibble about whether or not they are a reasonable reflection of what actually happened. So what we have here, a lot of this, especially the more recent ones, are pretty minimal minutes. There's not much to quibble about. And yet, we can't seem to get around to improving them, even in their sort of stripped down version.
The most recent one, they're not stripped down. They're not stripped
The
down.
most recent one?
Yes.
Well, the most recent one's pretty much. Anyway. How shall we?
I kind of like Steve's idea of I'm overwhelmed by them. I will tell you that every time I look at this and think we have this many minutes to do all at once,
Well, they're
it's
getting
overwhelming.
closer to
I
every
know,
time
it's
we look.
getting worse and worse for
Yeah.
that. On the other hand, we need the record because it's after a while, unless we have our own notes
Right.
to remember, or if somebody says, well, which town board member was against or for, more than just a vote and why, and whether that's really a big issue in the big picture of history, I don't know. But these are part of the issue.
Yeah, and it's like.
And that's this is what I keep trying to say, is that the record is there. The record is posted. The public has access to the record of these meetings. So whether or not you put your stamp of approval on them, there is a record.
Yeah, I understand.
But it may be inaccurate, like
It's
wrong
not
date, which is
inaccurate.
wrong.
There
Yeah,
are
the wrong
words-
date has been on some minutes before. That's inaccurate.
and I fixed them because you said the date is wrong. However, I will say that the problem with the written word is that everybody interprets it differently. Everybody interprets speech differently. Everybody interprets written passages differently. So one person can read it as incorrect while the other person will read it as correct. And there is nothing that any of us can do about it, but we have the written document, we have the audio recording, and we have a transcript. Those three things together, boom, record.
Minutes are the only thing that really counts.
No, they are not.
That is the official record, is the
As
minutes.
is the official transcript and the audio recording.
So, no.
Well,
Okay, let's stop. Let's stop.
Yeah.
Official record, we'll deal with this some other way. The official record for the town, any town, is the written minutes.
And the
So-
official record is there whether or not you put your stamp of approval on it. Because
True
I
that.
created them and I posted them and they are there. I have done my duty.
Except the ones that are missing.
Well, there's only one missing. Well, this is actually more than one. This is the one from 2021.
Oh, those were, yeah, several months were never done and years ago, yeah.
Anyway, use your mic, please.
Yeah.
You moved it away from you. That doesn't work.
I wasn't really saying anything.
Okay. How shall we proceed?
We're skipping the minutes this meeting and now we go
Yes,
on.
but let's not just skip the minutes of the meeting and come to the next meeting and say, well, we still haven't resolved how to do this. Let's decide how we're going to get from here to getting.
I like Steve's idea.
Do the last
of
five.
a date. And then, people, send in suggestions or however, and after a certain date, you get all, look at them and either approve them or not.
So why don't we focus on the last five, not including today?
Right.
So that would be starting March 7th, I think.
Yeah,
And let's just say that we will review them, comment on them, suggest changes, which Janice will consider through the end of this month. And then we will have time at the beginning of the next month to see a completed document and vote on it in our first meeting of June,
So through April 1st.
you mean
through June 1st. Well, through the end of May.
through the
right.
end of May.
What?
I know. Well, just because the weather feels like it.
June 1. Oh my gosh. I was thinking March. June 1st. Okay.
So, okay, so the proposal is that we look at the minutes from the 7th of March.
Yeah.
Right.
March 7th, March 22nd, April 4th, April 19th, and May 2.
Okay,
7, 22, 4, 19, and 2.
any proposed changes should be made in track changes in work drive by the end of the month. At which point they get locked in until we vote on it. Okay,
Janice, did that work for you?
Fine by me.
Did that process work for you?
It's fine by me.
I expected so. Right, where are we? Warrants, right.
Move the Water District 1. Vouchers 11 through 14 for $5,403.13.
Second,
What was the big item?
The training.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We can,
Yeah, right.
for their,
Awful lot of money for a couple of hours.
Yeah, does anyone have more information about that?
Well, I mean, I can tell you.
Okay,
Oh.
I mean, I know what the training was. $5,000 does seem like an awful lot of money. And I'm just,
They have to charge it really well for what they do.
yeah,
And, and they charge the same whether you're a little bitty district or you're fit in Minneapolis. Their guys come, they quote 2 days of training. They were here for, they came 2 days and it was 2 or 3 hours each day. And it cost us $5,000 to do. But it's the only way to do business with them.
how often do they have to do the training?
Should be one and good for the system.
Or the system, but
It was
for
to
the people,
learn how to work Beacon system,
right,
the remote reading and
So now-
get it to sync with the bill paying.
right, and this is the
software.
first training that they've done.
Yeah,
Okay, well, this is a long time coming.
what was even worse was that we paid for years for before, and we were paying for the software and not using it.
Yeah, right. So it's now that this training happened, can the people who are trained, train new people? Or do these guys have to come back?
I don't think they need to come back.
Okay.
It's not that big a deal to learn how to use it either.
Right, okay.
No doubt, things will change, want you to do an update or something, but we're good for the moment anyway.
Okay.
So, let's see, it was moved and seconded, any discussion more? Okay, Janice,
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
yes.
Laura? Is she there?
Yeah, she's there.
Trying to figure out how to unmute.
Oh, can somebody unmute her?
Hello,
There
There
you
you
are.
Good
There you
now.
are.
Hi.
Hey, Laura.
Hi.
Hey, should there be a dental bill for highway? Dental insurance bill? There was one for the general fund.
It's one bill and she splits it out between the two things and
I know.
hand writes it on there. So it's one bill.
But there's not, a
But
section
there isn't one on highway?
I saw it.
where,
I thought I did too, Leslie.
I thought I saw it when I went through it where it was handwritten twice.
Hold on a minute, let me look. I've got my information here.
insurance bill, but I didn't see the dental bill. It should
Well,
have been for
this is-
$684.30.
Isn't that an insurance bill?
Yeah, no, there's an insurance bill and then there's the dental bill.
What dental bill other than insurance?
It's insurance covering dental.
Insurance dental bill and
There's insurance and then there's
The
a
way
dental.
around the dental insurance bill.
It's a dental insurance bill.
Oh, there's two kinds of insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
there's two
One of them
on,
has dental
there's
insurance and the
two
other
on
other
general
insurance.
fund.
Right.
They're both on general fund and the highway, there was no dental, which I think probably, I don't know if it can wait until.
Probably should have
That's a
been.
general fund expense, isn't it?
No. No. All the insurance and dental insurance gets split out between highway and the general fund. And you could be right. As a matter of fact, I think you are. Okay, we've got the regular health insurance for the highway.
Yeah.
But no,
But no
And I did
dental.
not put great catch. Thank you, Leslie. I did not put the CSEA on this one. No, I did not, but I need to do that. So you can see the breakdown on the backup that was attached to the general fund.
Yeah.
so there,
Right.
there'll be a voucher.
Yes, can we
111
add that, please? Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much.
$4.30.
For how
So
much?
$684.30.
Is the highway portion?
Yeah,
So that's.
How do you know that?
because it's.
Because you looked at the
'cause
bills.
there's the dental bill for general and it's split.
Yeah, but
She
the one
writes
I'm
it down.
seeing for general is
Yeah, so
570.25.
it'll be in the-
Oh,
Right.
I see. Yeah. I see.
If you look at if you look at the backup, you'll see that I split it down between general and highway. And so the highway portion, oh, I'm so glad you saw that. I went to print checks and to send out these payments and I didn't have it on there. I apologize, you guys. Thank you for finding it.
So that's $684.30 less on the general fund, right?
No.
The general fund is correct.
General fund's correct?
The general
Or
fund
on
is
the
correct.
highway.
Well,
General-
she left it out.
No.
She left it out on the
Left it out
abstract.
of the highway.
So the highway with that added is $49,028.87.
That's what I got, yes.
So that's vouchers 92 through 111.
Mhm.
Ah, thank you.
And
I can't believe I missed that, but hey, we do, don't we?
I'll move that.
And I'll second it.
And I only had one more question.
105?
Did you look at the voucher 99 from Highway? That was from Trucks Outfitter in Binghamton.
Yes.
I mean, the bill was, well, the voucher was $99.96, but the actual transaction total looked like it was $828.
It looked like it was how much, Leslie? I'm sorry.
$828.94.
From
I
Trucks
might have-
Outfitters? Let me see.
That was voucher 99 in Highwood.
Voucher 99. I've got a backup for it for $99.96. Oh, you're looking at some other, they were other charges, $828.94. Wait a minute. Some special order item. More than likely, it's the way they've got this invoice set up here.
Okay. So
That
we only
other
owe
charge
$99.
is either credited back to us or not, and that's just the way they're presenting this, which is
Right,
not very
right.
clear. I agree with you, it's not very clear.
Okay.
But the balance due really is $99.96.
Okay, that's correct.
And but I will also look at that and verify it.
Okay.
And was the invoice, one invoice on 105 was missing? Was that added back?
105, yeah, this 7512 wasn't there.
Right.
$105 for the all the equipment.
Yeah, the second one, $75.12.
Hold on a second.
There's no bill for it, invoice or whatever I'll call it.
Yeah.
I have that 75, I've got both of them here.
Okay. That just didn't get scanned in. So, yeah.
Janice, can we just look and see if I scanned it? You might be able to put it up there.
No, I don't have it in the file that I uploaded to the work drive.
Oh, okay.
It just shows the invoice ending in 676.
Okay, well, if you guys approve this, I'll make sure that it gets scanned in. You can put your eyes on it the next meeting. How's that?
Okay.
I'm just happy just knowing that it exists.
Right here. I've got it attached to my
You
manual.
just find its way to the appropriate place so it's associated with
Yeah.
it, for
Okay.
record purposes. That's good
I'll
enough for me.
remember.
Yep, I've got it right here.
Just in case the auditor looked at it and said, where is it?
You know what? I'll send it over to you, Janice, and not right now, but if you pop it up there, it'll be there. The work drive.
Yeah.
That way we'll know we're covered.
Okay, we ready? Yes, Janice?
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes.
Okay, general fund.
Have the wrong numbers been changed, corrected?
Yes.
The voucher numbers or the account numbers.
Yeah.
There were there two.
With a point four.
There was one voucher 171 and voucher 160.
Mm-hmm.
The account numbers.
Can I ask a question? I'm just trying to understand why we have my telephone service, which is 169, and then also Verizon phone service, which is 170.
Verizon is on mobile, right?
What?
The Verizon phones are all mobile phones, right?
Yes.
And the hotel is the system, in the buildings, highway, right?
Is that right?
Is that right, Laura?
Yeah, the Verizon is are the cell phone charges, and the Mitel are the office charges.
Okay, but
What happened? Where's the, where are our legacy landlines that we're still doing? Where do they show up then? Well, we have the ones for like the building alarm. We have to keep, didn't we have to keep?
Yes, those are on the Charter Communications / Spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Spectrum.
so I guess my question is that the Mitel phone service is over $500 per month.
Mhm.
You should have seen it before we switched to Mitel.
Because there was It was closer to 800 before.
So I just don't understand what that encompasses, because I have a landline and it doesn't cost me $500 a
Well,
month.
it's not a business landline for one thing, but perhaps you could
It's-
explain.
Yeah, it's all of the phones at town hall and highway. So court, planner, code, clerk, historian, records management, library, and then highway. However many phones you all have at highway, Laura, I don't know. It includes the fax line, and it includes it's basically a voice over IP phone system. So it does emails, it does call transfers. We didn't have that with our previous service. It's a big step up and a huge reduction in phone costs than what we had been paying previously.
All right, thank you.
Still expensive, but it's less expensive.
Okay, there were the two.
$1,000 less expensive.
On 176 was the, or not
And then-
176. 173. There was, it's for 350, but the actual bill shows that 350 was the old one and there's a new on there. Are we just paying the old? Are we not paying the new? Are we supposed to pay them
No,
both?
there was a credit associated with those three invoices.
Oh,
Three
and
hundred
So-
$61.73.
but the total was for three.
So you should
I
look at
thought
the-
the total was 365.17.
It was, the total was 365.17. And if you look at the actual bill, there's two parts. One says past due, and the past due is 350.51. And then there was another one at a small amount before that.
Well, if you're looking at the statement, we can't go by the statement. What you have to do is look at all of the invoices that are presented. So there are three invoices, one for $16.40, one for $13.88, and then one for $381.96. Then what is on the statement is a credit that Laura circled, $61.73. So as she wrote out on the statement, the total that we're paying for these shop tools are those three invoices that have been presented minus the credit.
Okay, makes sense.
On 167, the key business, which was phenomenally confusing. The voucher explicitly has a line item for a negative
Credit of 100.
credit, but that doesn't show up anywhere on the abstract. Either it should be neither place or both places. I assume we just take it off the voucher.
Oh, sorry, hang on. Let me
Where
open
is
it
it
up.
gonna show?
Yeah, that was the one, Janice, you took it off of,
I had
town
included
clerk
it, but
supplies.
yeah, I had included it, but then you said to put it on so that it would lower the price. So I did
Yes.
put it in, and then I think, yeah, so then in the abstract, it just shows the total for the town hall supplies is that minus the credit, which is the 219. So Laura, let me pull up your email.
So basically what Janice did and what we did was take the credit and netted it out against the expenditure under the totals under her name for the town clerk's credit card portion.
Well, I assume
That got
that,
netted, but possibly maybe in the future, maybe when I wrote it on there, we should have just said, let's put a separate line item on it and show it as a negative, a credit, and
Yeah,
it would have
so
been
it's,
clearer.
well, actually, that's what I thought it was, but when I added that up and took the credit off, it didn't match. On my abstract, it says $400.
hang on. On
And if
your
I take
abstract,
I'm looking at an old one, Pat, because I know,
the current abstract shows a town hall supplies line of $219.75. So that is $400.74 minus the credit of $180.99, which gives you $219.75.
Okay, so the abstract has changed.
The abstract was changed, yeah,
Okay, so
after
that
I looked at it.
100 is 219.75. So the total for that line is 2,181.49.
Correct.
And if you take that plus the
Has to be
amounts from the
180,
highway, it balances right to the credit card bill.
9708.
Everything, I had everything else balanced except for that.
39, so
And I believe we were supposed to take out A180.
We did. Yes.
It's been taken out of a revised version.
Yep.
Under what?
So that's what I'm getting.
4211609.
Yeah.
4211609.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's that. So, and,
Leslie, you had a question about the taxes for the library?
yeah, well, I didn't have a
Yeah.
question. We need to not have taxes on those bills.
Yes, and those are actually old. We have since set up a tax exempt account that Lynn uses through Target for buying library books and supplies and DVDs. So going forward, she should be presenting invoices that no longer have the sales tax on them.
This is an old one.
Yeah, I think I have to go back and look at she had some invoices from December and November, I believe. Yeah, the most recent one was April 28th. It shouldn't have taxes on it. She did ask me, she got locked out of the account, so maybe that's why she didn't use it for this most recent purchase.
You're gonna say that again?
What do you mean locked out of the account?
Out of the Target account, yeah. But I don't include the sales tax on these items here. So the total to reimburse her for is excluding sales tax.
Well, what's that then?
That is what is presented on the voucher, 270.59.
That has the sales taxes taken out?
Yep. So if you look at the first one, for example, it was an invoice total of $20.10, which included sales tax of $1.49. But what shows up on the voucher is $18.61. 2010 minus $1.49.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I guess I'll move the general fund vouchers 155 through 181 for $42,116.09.
Excluding 180.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is-
that does not count 180.
That's excluding 180.
Okay,
Yeah.
Second,
How do we have it at 181?
There were actually 181 vouchers, Pat. So when we took out 180 for the truck, it brought the last one down. So instead of going from 155 to 181, it now goes 155 to 180.
okay. She changed the numbers, so it now goes from 151 to 180.
That's one's choice word.
So it's through 180, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll second.
I already got a second.
Did you have a second already?
Yep.
Yeah.
I beat you to it.
All right. Here.
I'm ready for a vote.
Are we? Okay.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes. You. Further consideration of whether the proposed change from elected to appointed clerk and highway superintendent. We recall that we decided to postpone consideration till we got clarity on the question of the civil service implications of the appointed clerk. And Laura did some research and can tell us about it.
I don't, yeah.
Laura?
Yeah, the last time that you met, that a couple of meetings ago, actually, you'd asked me to look into this and what this would mean by having an appointed town clerk or an appointed highway superintendent. And this is what I found out. Still waiting to hear more because this opened even a further can of worms into the county when I was asking this question. And there has been something sent to the deputy commissioner for further clarification of some of it. But I will tell you what I found out. You have choice. You have two choices. If you were to make this, put it up and it was to become an elected or an appointed position. It can either be a full civil service appointment, which would mean it would no longer be considered unclassified. It would be considered a competitive position. The person would have to take a civil service test, and you would then appoint someone from the list from the civil service test, and that person would be protected through all of the civil service rules and regulations. Okay. The other choice that you would have, it would be an appointment that would be considered a renewable term appointment. I think that's what like Steve is. Steve is an officer, okay, our code enforcement officer, and each year you guys reappoint him. When you do that first resolution of the year, he's reappointed. At least I think that's the way that it used to be. Double check me on that one, but a renewable term appointment would not be subject to civil service rules. It would be subject to state rules, of course, which all of them are subject to state rules. But that would be a reappointment for, and you could set, say, a 1-year reappointment, a 2-year term for a reappointment. But that's what that would be. Of course, that person reports to the town board. But they also, like it's saying in the case of the town clerk, nothing about this would supersede any state law. So as long, whatever state laws pertain to the duties of the town clerk, but there are also there's also a statement that I read in there. You could add to the duties of the town clerk, set up specific special duties for the town clerk, as long as they were not in conflict with any state laws that were on the books for that town clerk. So that's the information that I've gotten. A renewable term appointment would be, say you decided to do a reappointment every year. That town clerk would also still take an oath of office. And that's what it would be. But I'm still waiting to hear back from the deputy commissioner in the county as well. For any other little tidbits that they can, of information they can provide that'll give you even more information. A full civil service appointment, though, would be competitive. It would be full protections from civil service. I don't believe you'd be able to set a term limit and for you to change your mind on a person, but that's just what I have. I'm going to get further clarification of it also. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does.
Thanks. I think we should wait until we get more information.
Well, what more information do we need? Just the thing was that I think we're constrained if we wanted to put this on the ballot in November. We have to propose it pretty soon because we have to.
You know when?
Well, I think that the deadline for getting it on the ballot is August. So backing up, we have to have passed the law before then. And that means you have to propose it before that, because you have a public hearing associated with it. So, you know, that's how we end up back in June, and June's coming up pretty quick here.
Yeah.
So we have to make up our mind whether we want to propose it this year or not.
Right.
If we don't, then it's no, you know, we just wait until another time. But if we want to, we have to make up our mind that we do, and it needs to be soon.
I am opposed to proposing it now. In fact, I am not in favor of doing one where the town board just simply appoints without having some external evaluation from other people involved besides just town board members completely.
Well, I mean, how we go about making the appointment, if the voters approve doing it, is basically up to us.
I would not vote for it unless it's part of it. If it's not part of it, I would not vote for it.
Yeah.
Okay. I heard you say two different things, Pat. I'm sorry, I'm trying to sort out the two things you just said. If you try it again. I didn't understand the difference. It sounded like you said two different things. You would, or you would do something and you wouldn't do something. That's what I heard.
I would only support an appointment by the board if there was procedures involved that guarantee that other people had input in it and we had appropriate procedures for resumes and
Okay.
references and checking references. I wouldn't approve it if that wasn't part of it.
Okay, but then I thought I heard you say you would not even consider it unless all those things were set before we even, is that what you said?
That's correct.
Okay, well, I think that it takes a little, I don't see any problem with the idea of having a better selection process than just saying, okay, the town board's going to do it. But I do see a problem holding up the question until all the procedures are set.
I would not vote for it without procedures. in
Okay,
place.
that's what I wanted to find. That's what I heard you say.
That's what I said.
The only thing I want to say tonight is I'm getting pretty tired of the characterization of the board making bad decisions. I'm really getting tired of that. I think it's unfair and it's uncalled for in spite of, and I'm making a public statement that characterizing the board as not being able to make good decisions is I find unfortunate, and I'm trying to think of words that are okay to say. If not, I don't think it's a good thing to continue to characterize the board in such a negative way. I think it's unfair, and to say that, to use an example of one appointment and also that characterizes the appointee badly, I think that's just a bad way to go about this. I'd rather look at the idea of doing appointment versus elected in a different way. We've had this discussion in the past years, and one of the reasons for it was that the idea that we're taking away votes or taking away the
vote for the people.
Of the people. And that is what we're hearing about every single thing we're proposing, about the noise law, about logging, about this and that and everything. And we're fully available to the town people all the time, whether anybody comes directly to us. I don't get a lot of comments. I had 2 calls about the noise law personally. 2 out of all the people who vote or have comments. That was one of the things when Pat and I came onto the board, we said we're available. So to characterize us as not listening is patently, I'm sorry, but it's offensive and I think unfair. So the other issue about that, I've heard people say, well, the board all just says aye, aye, and everybody votes the same, as though we don't consider, and that is not true either. You hear us disagree from time to time. So the other argument for that kind of neutralizes it is that the town board is elected. The town board each member has a 4-year commitment. And that is how, that is a representation of the people by members of the town board. So that's all I want to say right now.
To me, first of all, when it comes down to, appointed versus elected, most of the time, and I mean like probably 4/5 or more, the people don't have any choice anyway. There's usually when you get a clerk or a highway superintendent, if they're doing a halfway decent job, nobody runs against them. It's only when the position turns over for one reason or another, because there's a resignation, or somebody retires, usually that there's people jump in and say, well, I'll do it, and others are willing, and then you have a choice. So we're not taking much away from the voters if the board makes the appointment. The other thing is that in order for the voters to be able to intelligently choose, and I do agree that the voters are every bit as capable as we are of making a good choice, but only if they're informed. And trying to get the entire electorate, those who are actually going to show up at the polls, to know enough about the candidates to choose, between them is a formidable task. It's a lot easier for 5 people to be reasonably informed about the choice and to make the choice on behalf of the people, which is what a representative democracy is about. But so to me, that's the argument for having it be appointed instead of elected. It's just so hard. Yeah.
I think about, I forget what year it was, but there was a long time highway superintendent who was maybe, I'm guessing now, it was like 1 or 2, maybe 2 years away from retirement, who was voted out by somebody who happened to be part of a political party that the majority of the town is. So, I think about that a lot.
It was an incompetent highway superintendent.
Well, I don't know if you want to, there was somebody who was doing a decent job.
The 2-year one who replaced him was incompetent, and he only lasted for 1 term.
All people names, but there were, maybe there were some, he also got sick. So I don't want to, whether he's competent or not, somebody who was a highway superintendent who was doing a good job was voted out. And I'm going to say because he wasn't part of the majority political party. And the town lost on that one. And so, a lot of people vote party and they don't vote outside of their party. And that can be a problem.
Yeah, or absent other information, they tend to defer to the party's choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing, is to get people information enough to be able to choose it comes down to the parties being able to do it too, because there's a limit to how much we, the electeds we can't campaign on behalf of, we can only share, with an even hand information about the candidates. And even that we've avoided doing in recent times, which leaves it up to the parties to share the information and get the word out. And if the party doesn't happen to, it's
But I'd like to wait at least until Laura gets more information.
Fine.
What more information are we looking for?
Well, there's some more detail about appointments, termination issues we don't know about.
I think that's the upshot of what she has learned already, but the renewable term appointment basically gives you a lot more control than full service does, because
She very clearly says she's waiting for additional information from the deputy commissioner.
yes, but the additional information is, okay, Laura, tell us what additional information you expect to get from the commissioner.
Termination for any reason.
I'm not really sure. I'm really not sure. I think some of this is possibly they're just kind of confirming, confirming the information they gave me, and they're just going to. I'm expecting that the word back is going to be just about exactly what I said, because if you look at other appointed officials, okay, for instance, let's take our code enforcement officer. That's exactly what that is too. Now, let's say, another thing I found out when I was in my reading was that, let's say somebody came in, they weren't doing a good job, and you wanted them to go. Let's hope that that never happens. Probably never would. You can wait until their term is up. And the only way to fire, if you would say, or to unseat an official, whether they're appointed or elected, those items in the middle of a term are the same. You would still have to have someone come forth with a petition to unseat that person, as you would say, or if the person has done something that is totally and completely unethical, which is either way, and the state mandates those rules. So the state would mandate those rules. But if you had a term appointment, that would be, every year, they're reappointed or they're not. Okay, but as far as getting of them being dismissed in the middle of a term, same rules apply. The same rules would apply. The only thing is if it's a full civil service position, the control of any of those things is pretty much taken out of the hands, and you made it a full civil service person. That person's protected by all civil service rules, all regulations. There is no term. That is what it is. Okay, they would report to the town board, but if you had a term appointment, then you would have the ability to reappoint each year, or not reappoint each year, or not reappoint in that year, and then go through the whole process of, getting applications again and whatever it is, that it's in through your policies, the policies that you have for making appointments.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so.
So that's what I'm anticipating hearing from them. I don't think that those processes are really going to be any different, just from what I've researched and what I've found out. But you don't know what other tidbits they're going to have or other things to think about.
I mean, no matter what, the public would like to have information as well. And there's plenty of time, if there were a decision to even consider this, there's a lot of time for information sharing and appointment procedures to be made. I mean, I don't think that,
No, what the only thing is.
We'd need to decide like by the end of June to be able to have public hearings to make a law.
yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe we could wait as long as that.
I mean, that would be pushing it.
Yeah, it would
But
be. Mhm.
I want to think more about this. And just the timing, for me.
Well, that's another question, whether we want to propose it, whether now's the right time to propose it,
Right.
regardless.
Right. And I'd actually like to, maybe contact a couple towns that have made the switch
Mhm.
and ask for them, what's the difference? Yeah, find out how, if they switch to appointed, how do they pick? What kind of a committee do they have?
Wait, want to look into that? And
Yeah.
report back?
After Steve and I meet about the short-term rental.
Mhm. Mhm. So,
For me, my last statement is, I don't feel that this is, and although I'm probably going to be crossed for it, but I think, I don't think it's about personality. It's not personal. This is an interesting situation, and anybody can apply for a job. And that's why I think it's sort of an interesting way to remember that the world operates in a lot of ways by the qualified people apply for with background and abilities and then then they get selected according to that, but anyway,
I mean, the thing about,
sorry.
I mean, it has been pointed out that, it's mostly larger towns that have made the switch from elected to appointed. And I think it's been mostly driven by the fact that, in those larger places, the job gets even more difficult for somebody to walk into without any
Right.
kind of background or experience. And the qualifications in the law are that you're over 18 and a resident,
Right.
So, I mean, anybody can run for this office. And they may or may not be able to actually do the job once they're in it.
Right. There are a number of towns in New York State that have gone, at least, I think I only looked at highway, that switched to appointed. Not all of them are big, so.
Yeah,
I mean,
But anyway, that's often a driver.
yeah,
And the other, looking at it from the other side, there are, because this is, both of these jobs, but especially the clerk are ministerial in nature. They're not policy-making positions.
Right.
The kind of person who would be interested and willing to do it is sometimes put off by the politics of having to run for the office,
yeah,
where they'd be perfectly willing to apply for and on the strength of their qualifications, be considered for appointment.
right.
And,
Yeah.
I think that has some value as being part of the equation.
I've
for-
heard that, voiced for both, people who were potentially interested in highway and clerk,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
they
me
just
too.
weren't interested in
Yeah,
running.
you said it better than I was saying it. That's basically part of what I'm saying. Part of it, yeah.
So you're gonna look into,
Yeah.
why and how,
Just
and how happy they have made the
experiences,
switch
yeah.
and what prompted them to do it. So we can put this on the agenda again for next time.
And I will forward to you any information that I hear from that commissioner.
Okay,
Okay?
yep. Okay. So the Bruce Hill Road Conservation Easement.
We're past 2 hours.
All right, good. Yeah, we probably are.
Yeah.
Would you like to make one?
No,
What, you want to quit?
that'd be better.
We have business that we really ought to conduct, but
Well, let's at least do the conservation easement. 10 minutes at the most.
we've got several other things too that are tacked on the agenda.
Yeah, we have the things
Oh.
for the highway that they're selling stuff. We need to do those.
You know, there's the seniors request, there's the highway request, there's the community tax dues at the town hall.
Maybe we extend the meeting till 8:30.
Yeah, okay, second.
Okay. The vote, Janice?
Sorry, Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes. Where were we?
Goose Hill Road
Oh, yeah.
Conservation Easement.
Conservation easement. I move that we accept the easement and authorize me to sign and execute it.
Second.
I'll third.
Yeah,
Any discussion?
maybe it should be, Leslie should second it.
Yeah,
No,
maybe we should have a signing ceremony next time. I like to do
I know you do.
that. Janice?
Connors,
yes.
Hunter,
Yes,
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes. I'm guessing we want to skip goal setting.
Yes.
Okay. Laura had a couple of relevant things though for us to take consideration for when we come back to it. Information about the solar array
All right.
and also about the cover over the salt
The
shed.
salt barn,
Yeah.
shed barn.
I
So-
sent something out to you guys for you, just a little reading on it.
Yeah, so I mean, we wanted more information about that and we're getting it, so good. Next steps on the noise law.
What?
We should approve that,
Oh,
selling the stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's coming up, but it's, we're getting there. And we haven't got through the list of, those things were added to the end of the agenda after we got through the ones that were here before. So 10.4 was next steps in joint noise law. Just in consideration, where are we with it? You know,
I have more information. One of the people that I talked to was the district attorney's office for Tompkins County.
mhm.
The person who called me back, I did not talk to the district attorney. It was somebody who's been in the office for a long time. He said he has no recollection of any recent issues using the state noise law coming to the district attorney's office recently. He said there may have been something many years ago, but if it did, it was only from the city of Ithaca.
Why would it go to the DA?
Depends on what it is and how bad it is. But he also had a suggestion that in addition to checking on the state law, we determine if the state police or sheriff will actually enforce a local noise law.
Mhm.
I did contact the state police. I sent them an email a while ago. They didn't respond for a long time. Warren said they don't respond quickly. I sent it with a very generic question about the use of the law. And I sent it a second one a little while ago that had a very specific example and also asked about enforcing local laws. And I did hear back. And the reason I didn't hear the first time is because the guy who was in charge recently left. So they had some changes in the state office. This is the general counsel office for the state police. It is not the local state police agency. He did send back saying a short response. The state police do not enforce local ordinances. That was for that part. The second part was a specific, I gave a specific example of a loud party and whether they would do that. He said, it is possible that the scenario you mentioned could be a violation of PL 240-20, but this would need to be assessed in the specific factual context of a particular incident, i.e. it is not always applied, because he didn't say it was always applied.
Yeah.
But I did not talk to him. I was going to follow up and talk and get more details about what that other statement meant. And I will email, but I actually have a phone number for him and I will actually call him. The other thing is I had asked Warren if he would check. He has the noise laws from tons of different places. I asked him if he would check to see which of those towns, how they're enforced, whether it's towns that have local law enforcement or whether it's other ones. And since he has about 300 or 400, that's a good sample to use. And he said he could do that. It won't take him very long, but he doesn't have it now.
It doesn't know yet.
Also, it's been noted that many noise issues are handled through zoning, especially with business noises. And of course, we do that regularly. But there was a prior issue that I remember, the hemp drying operation. The issue with that one seemed to be that my recollection was that it was something to do with ag and we couldn't do anything about it. It was very loud, but it was not an agricultural district and it was not a Danby farmer is my recollection. So I thought it was worth checking with the state ag department to look at those particular cases, because again, this is a case where this was a business oriented case. So I was going to check with the agriculture to see if they realize their laws may be out of date and maybe it should be a state law change, but also look and see, just what they feel on that particular issue. And I have not contacted them, but I will. It's the state ag department.
Ag and market,
Yeah, they got involved with that situation.
did they?
Yeah.
Fortunately, well, the problem went away.
Not
It wasn't really resolved. Had it been ongoing, would have had an ongoing issue. I have additional information to bring to bear too. I brought the matter up to the supervisor's
Oh,
monthly
yeah.
call
Yeah.
to see what others' experience was. And Caitlin Olson, who's the supervisor in Ulysses, said that they're looking at possibly creating a local ordinance. And that their investigation so far had, I mentioned that we had information that Newfield, had decided to use the state law, and that we had guidance from the village of, is it Otsego?
Endicott.
Oh, Endicott, yeah. That, that they had relied on the state law. And what she told me was their investigation is that the Otsego choice of to use in state law was based on an investigation of what the judicial rulings had been, and was relying on the fact that the use of that state law had been upheld in Syracuse. In other words, the Syracuse experience informed the Otsego choice.
Oh.
So that was an interesting thing. So but in both cases, we're looking at a local enforcement authority. Okay?
Right.
And we're not. So, I mean, I think a critical consideration here is not only what does the law say, but what do the law enforcement agency that is your enforcement agency, what are they willing to do?
Right.
So when I
think
spoke to the sheriff's department,
Yeah.
they said that they do enforce local ordinances, local laws.
Yeah. Well, the sheriff, they certainly would enforce the local ordinance. Question is why won't they enforce the state law? And that's a discussion that probably should be had with Derek, rather than with, our experience has been that we don't do it. Well, maybe not. Newfield's relying on you to do it. And, if you're not doing it, that's an issue, particularly since some places rely on the local enforcement being willing to do it, think that is applicable. So there's definitely room for difference of opinion. If you read the thing carefully, and I did, public is used in two different ways there. And that list, you say, well, public applies to all of them. Well, it's specifically mentioned for several of the things, and it's not mentioned for noise. So it means two different things.
But if you look at the court interpretations of the whole body of 240s, of which 240-20 is one example, there's a penumbra. Those are all public place laws, even though not every single bullet point has the word public in them. They all apply to public spaces.
Yes, but
And we would need to know more about this case, I guess, that's being referred to in Syracuse. If it occurred in a public space, then of course it would be enforced.
yeah, and of course, the interpretation is, what do you mean by public?
And if you look at cities, there are lots, the streets are
Right.
more public.
A lot of times the definition
houses
of
next
public
together.
has to do with how many people are in a certain area. And I think that is the problem with a rural
That's right.
location. If you're a rural property owner, you don't have a public space. If you have a house in Syracuse and there's 20 houses on the block, that is a public space.
I don't know. I mean, I think
Where the
there's
sidewalks
there's
are.
room for it to be interpreted the way Ted, whatever, the retired police officer did, which is that public is what's not you.
Well, that's not, but if you look in the case law that I included last time, it's very specific. It cites specific rulings on what constitutes and what does not constitute public. And again, it has to be a large number of people who are affected, and right, it's not public disturbance, right? I mean, the sheriff's department was very clear that it does not apply, and that's also what the judicial record is very clear on. It does not apply to rural properties. Those are not public. Those do not fall under 240-20. And we also have the anecdotal evidence of numerous people who have come to the board and said they tried having the sheriff's department and they were told that that did not apply.
Right.
Not that it wouldn't be enforced, but that it did not apply.
That's not in question. No question that the history here, near as I can tell, is of the sheriff's department believing that it doesn't apply. Although, Newfield, obviously, planning board in Newfield and then eventually the town board in Newfield came to a different conclusion and relied on that conclusion and saying that we don't need a law because we can rely on this one. What's not clear to me is if it works for, the village of Endicott.
They have their own police force.
Endicott is not a,
It's a pretty good sized place.
Yeah.
And they've got their own police. So that's a.
I think what Leslie said, I think that's the biggest deal is when you have your own law enforcement. The sheriff's department is for all of the county.
Yeah, I mean, they are our law enforcement.
I mean, I've called when there's been fireworks that down by you, that come up all over and they say it goes all over up to Ithaca and everything. And I mean, they came and they went and they looked for and they tried to, and they were nice to me about and then when I've called, when I've been scared shitless by some kind of really loud booms, but then I find out, well, that doesn't count because
Not fireworks.
well, if you're allowed 500 feet from a house, somebody can shoot a gun and scare somebody. I mean, that was when I didn't know some of the stuff I know now. But anyway, they'll come, they might come, but I think the issue is, I mean, I've never called about
prohibition,
it. Right, they're already, the things I called about are already illegal.
Yeah. You don't need a lot for that.
So it's complicated, yes. And
Well, I don't think it is complicated. 240-20 does not apply in the town of Danby.
well,
We can't expect, if we are interested in providing residents of Danby with relief from noise that is unreasonable, they're not going to find that relief utilizing 240-20. They will have the same experience that they have already experienced, which is the sheriff's department saying it does not apply.
I do think that the problem, one of our big problems is the definitions that we're using in these laws. And what's unreasonable to me and what's unreasonable to each of us. So there is always going to be that problem. Back to what Warren said, is if there is the idea that there's somebody that will help, that was the one comforting thing to me. But I think that definitions are a big problem.
What would be wrong with basically mirroring the structure of 240.2 and saying,
Take away the word public.
just it's a violation to create unreasonable noise, and then leave it to the discretion of the judge to determine what's unreasonable. Because it depends. The context matters.
Well, sure, but I also think that we've heard from a number of community members who are concerned that they would be in violation of a broad ordinance. And what I liked about what Warren had was that in addition to more closely defining what is unreasonable and citing specific factors like duration and time of day, etc., it also set aside exceptions. So 240-20 is very broad. And that's because it's a disorderly conduct law. It's not really a noise law per se. Making loud noises with the intent of disrupting a public space is disorderly conduct, but it doesn't, that's a specific use of noise. Making a loud noise with the specific intent of disrupting your neighbor, that wouldn't fall under 24020. That is basically what the sheriff's department is saying.
Mhm.
But so, and 24020 is one sentence, basically.
Yeah.
So I think in order to address the concerns on both sides of the issue, we want something that's a little more specific. Could certainly use the general structure, but I think what Warren had was more detailed, which I think is what the board said they wanted.
I think that we have not even touched the expenses for the town. I'm saying we haven't decided, we're not deciding tonight. That's the way I think about it. I'm
Well,
glad
could
you're
we
still
think
waiting for
about next
information.
steps at least?
I don't know, but I know we said till 8:30 and we haven't touched the town, the
We got other stuff
highway.
to do,
piece.
yeah, but I don't know that we want to just kick the can down the road.
Well, what are we gonna do then? Add more time to the meeting?
Yeah, I'm all-
I mean, I think, I mean, if nothing else, I've heard, a need to be more clear about what's unreasonable and to beef up the exemption list, which is some of
Yep.
it's wrong.
Be more,
You know, the hunting at night, you can hunt at night. So you can shoot your gun after dark. That's on the list. Well, it should be taken off the list.
Very
Anyway.
important, just the things you can't do.
It's on the list of things you can't do, but you can do that.
Although,
in the
somebody else
fine-
pointed out, it's been a long time since anybody did any nighttime hunting in Danby.
Well,
But
you
it-
don't live in my neighborhood.
it
I don't know if they're
isn't,
hunting,
Matt,
but they're
okay,
shooting.
Yeah.
that argument is the same argument that gets everybody in trouble all the
Yeah.
time. It's been a long time since.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter if
Doesn't have-
if it's a law that you can, and we say you can't, then maybe the law supersedes what we're saying.
well, just ag and market law with Trump.
So,
I mean, there were a
I'm
lot of
concerned about the
complaints about
fines.
the fine.
yes,
So
Well, it's the same as, up to,
it's just, you know, nobody wants the first time you do something, it's up to $200. Well, there's some people, that it's just, you know, I think it would be
feels
good if it
arbitrary.
was, you know, the town said warning, you know,
Yeah.
or something. It just sounds, it's bad way to
Bad
deal with
juju.
people.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that there are a couple of things that could be reworked with what Warren came up with.
and I want to hear what Pat said, Warren would come up with. I want to hear that.
Oh, right,
what do you
right.
mean, the,
Other
Yeah.
towns and who did what.
who enforces it?
Yeah,
Enforcement.
okay.
And I'd like to see a relaxation of a few of the prohibitions and I would like to see warning first,
Yeah.
period. I mean, that's me, but
Jerry suggests we have a committee to suggest changes to the draft.
I think it would be good to have a committee, and I think it's important to include people who have voiced concerns on both sides of the
Yeah.
issue.
yes, I totally think that's a good idea.
I mean,
Shall we invite?
I think that would be a good idea. I mean, we still have the sign-in sheet.
Well, yeah, we have some idea, but we could mention in the article, in this month, that we're creating a committee and we're inviting those who are particularly concerned about the content of the law to.
Well, I'm concerned about, with a committee with 30 people on it
Right.
who are vehemently opposed. I'd rather contact a small number of people who were present at that
there were
meeting so
people
that,
that were there at the end that were very interested in having a conversation.
As opposed to simply stating a position and not really interested in.
right.
The no way, no how group, not what we really want to participate. We want is well, maybe we need it, but I want to be sure that it has, that it's reasonable.
Well, they also, at that meeting, there were the very small group who came willingly to come and
Yeah.
were willing to speak up that they wanted one. And so it was a little intimidating. So to make sure we have people who, on
Yep.
both sides. So we could do that and.
Okay, well,
Okay, so
I'm happy to be on the committee. Would it make sense for me to put together a short list of possible people to invite and then share that. Thank you.
We do have an attendance list.
I would also,
So it sounds like you're willing to be on the committee.
sure,
Is that Catherine volunteering for that one?
I'll volunteer to participate.
okay.
I'll be the contrary one.
Yeah, him and somebody would do some.
So I think I'd be willing to have you decide who to approach among the people who were there to add, to invite to participate, besides the two of you. Even though it runs the risk of looking a lot like what happened the first time around when I told Betsy, go ahead and decide who's going to be on the committee. But
Well, we'll probably bring it back here.
okay,
Yeah.
so I move we create a committee to suggest changes to the Warren proposed law, and to include a couple of people from the crowd that were present for the commenting forum that we had. And that committee consists of Steve and Catherine and a couple of those people. Catherine, okay.
Okay.
Fairly quick turnaround time since Steve won't be around.
Right.
for a couple of minutes.
Just long enough to kick the hornet's nest.
Yeah, right. There's a second?
I'll second that.
I thought Hunter seconded, no?
I moved it. Hunter, the proposal that the committee consists of Hunter and Weisberg.
I thought I heard her say I second, but that's okay.
You thought you heard what?
I thought I heard Catherine say a second.
I don't think so.
Okay, okay,
Les-
so,
So Leslie seconded it.
Yeah, Leslie seconded.
got it.
You need more discussion? No? Okay. Janice?
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Abstain.
Gagnon.
Yes. Right. I move we extend the meeting to 9.
No later. How,
Well, we finished sooner, so I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
we finished.
I just don't like, add 15 minutes and then
Yeah.
take 20 minutes and then decide you need another 10. Is there a second?
Reluctantly second.
Yes,
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter, Weisberg,
yes,
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
yes, okay.
Okay, what do we need? to
need to get the town,
Well,
the highway.
there's several things there. Oh, it's derelict and abandoned building. We can come back to that next time.
There's the authorization.
I
for
shared
sale.
with you, we had a discussion at staff meeting, which, about, doing something about derelict and abandoned buildings,
I've got a job.
as well as but Catherine would have come and turned to work.
I need a job.
And also the unsafe building thing that keeps coming up,
Okay, yeah,
and property maintenance, but we can
Okay.
deal with it next time.
yeah. I was gonna go through all that old
Yeah.
stuff.
Communitas has been using this meeting room for some of their stuff. And I thought, we should authorize it.
Who has?
Communitas, which is the 501c3 that consists of Janice and Matt Jarman. They do cool stuff with kids.
So Communitas is an ALC, it's an Agile Learning Center, and it is a self-directed recreation program. It had been downtown and they have since moved to Dotson Park. There have been a few times when they come into the library to use the space. When Joel came in a few weeks ago, I guess it was, they were actually doing a craft on the table when you had a meeting there, which
Thought they were having a great time. But
precipitated the need to request. formal
anyway,
use.
it seems like something I'd be happy to authorize. It's just that when they're using the place space, it'd be nice to know and have it be on the calendar so that, I checked ahead of time and scheduled the meeting to meet with the can't think with, I can't remember, it was the banker or the insurance people, but anyway,
Insurance.
here, and then they were using the space, but, so I think if they're going to use it, it ought to be an authorized use, not
Okay.
just quote
Right.
unquote visiting the library.
Okay, go ahead.
Janice said it was an LLC.
No, it's an
Right.
ALC, an Agile Learning Center. It's
That's
it's
fine. Yeah.
the official name is Communitas ALC is what it's a 501c3, but the
Oh.
name is Communitas ALC,
Where's ALT stand for?
Agile Learning Center. There is a network of Agile Learning Centers, and we are just a part of that network. That's all it does.
So I move that we authorize the use of the town hall for these activities by Communitas
Second that,
whenever the space is unused,
yeah.
not in conflict with our use.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
Well, the only question I have is you said, Janice said that if they are using the park, but they need to come in, it's the same situation that we have with the community, with the kiddos, if there's a thunderstorm that comes up.
Right, and we told them they could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it would have to be, I'd say it has to be the same.
Yeah.
Bad weather
Which could be, yeah.
could be
Right.
something
Potentially,
happening,
it could be-
but that's.
Well, I mean, if we happen to having a meet at the same time, then they would kind of be limited in what they could do the bill before.
Right.
We couldn't be using this space, but.
Right. Okay.
Although, I mean, it worked out all right. We went into my office.
Yeah,
But,
all right.
Okay.
all right. Right? So, Janice?
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Union.
The highway superintendent would like to get rid of some of the clutter. He has a bunch of stuff that he'd like to auction off, and he's back in the midst of the auction, but he can't really execute it unless we give him permission. It's mostly materials, but it's also a little bit of equipment, stuff that's hanging around and not using. Laura can elaborate on the list, it's things like
Oh, okay.
tanks and beams and pipes and whatnot. And we can get good money for it if you go to the trouble of auctioning them off, which.
Absolutely. There's a set of tires there that we would normally have to pay somebody to come take them and get them out of there. They're up on Auctions International. They've got really good pictures of the tread and the rims and that, and people are bidding on them. So these are items that we can put up there, and it's a great mechanism for all municipalities and all private companies to go up and put the stuff up. So people are bidding on it. What we did is we just made a list of the things that are up there now. And you can see some of those things. There's a couple of stainless steel fuel tanks, some old trusses that we had. They were out there when we had built the building for wood chips. Some perforated coils that we had around that we had been using for weepers, but we're not using that type anymore. A spreader chain, a salamander heater, tonneau cover that doesn't fit anything anymore. So those are the types of items that are out there. An old bucket from one of the old pieces of equipment. Somebody else can find a use for that stuff. So we'll keep you posted if you guys approve that, say that that's okay. He's got it in there because he put it up there because he wanted to get all this in for this next auction block, so if you could say, but he hasn't, accepted anything. As a matter of fact, some of the bids close out tonight.
Okay.
Get it out there.
I move that the town board authorize the highway superintendent to sell this list of items through Auctions International.
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, Janet.
Connors,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Weisberg,
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes.
Union.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Seniors request. Do this next one. I'm not missing one. Do you want to entertain it?
I am willing to entertain it. the senior presented, they do, it is one of the few ways that some of the older people in the town have communication with others. And one of the things that I hear in the news should then how bad it is. And if this does, we can do one small part of that, I'm all for it.
Okay, I mean, are we gonna talk about specific amounts or?
Well, if we're gonna do it at all, we need to, I think. I don't think we should give them like a blanket authorization to go ahead and spend more money.
Right.
Because you do it for a couple of years.
And
Yeah.
have they spent nothing? I mean,
Well, there were 2 years, 2020 and 2021, when they were, we had $5,000 in the budget for them each year. And they went 2 years without spending any of it because everything was shut down. And they spent it last year, except for a little bit, just short of full allocation. But what's happened is that they used to do, I think it was 3 bus trips a year. And the cost has gone up substantially, and there's now, the $5,000 doesn't go as far as it used to. So, I mean, it's not that they can't make it up. They'd have to charge more for people participating in the trips. What we have been doing is paying for the bus, and then they pay for the expenses of, wherever they're going. So they're finding that, what we're providing doesn't pay for 3 trips anymore. And they'd like to, if we get more money to go on more trips, well, yeah, I'm sure they would.
Right.
Some people, and I have some of this feeling, it's targeted a particular subset of the population. It's only seniors who can participate in this, and we're giving money specifically to them. As opposed to,
don't friends and relatives go on the trips too?
Don't think
As
so.
far as I know. I thought
Yeah,
they-
I'm pretty sure that helpers have been,
Yeah.
and some people can't go without a helper.
Well,
Yeah,
sure.
Just helpers.
Yeah.
I thought I heard, somebody's daughter, I'm not saying that I think it's bad, I didn't think everybody was a senior.
Well, no, right.
I mean, can we, her
We have a
budget
contract
is
with the
tight.
seniors.
They do have the contract, because it was,
truthful.
well, they, on memory called on the last warrant, there was a bill for the first trip.
Right,
And I told, I contacted Dan Clemens and said, we did a contract before we can give any money out. And he said, well, I've been sick, and it was Joe Vandermark?
Margie,
Okay, so-
Margie Vandermark it was the treasurer, interim treasurer,
so how much
Dan's
is,
away.
how much is it on the, how much is it on the budget? How much is it budgeted for?
$5,000.
Like that's right.
Yeah, that was what we appropriated and put in the budget. And that's what they requested at the time when we did the budget last
Right.
August. And now they're well, kind of like what the park did, they came back to us and said, it's gonna cost us more, we'd like to do more. And I said, well, this is what you put in the budget. This is what you asked for at the time, and we put it in the budget. This time around, we put more in the budget in light of their request, but it was budgeted, from August. But
I mean, it
not for the
sounds like they
seniors, because
wanted
they
to-
asked for the same $5,000 instead of saying, what's
And
gonna
it
cost
sounds
us
like
more.
they just want an additional trip. How much would that be?
Well, we didn't, basically, that's what I
I
was
think
fishing
that's the
for when it asked
information
for
we
reason.
really need.
Was that?
I think that's what we need is a number.
Yeah.
I mean, an additional trip is up to I mean, I remember seeing,
I thought they
bill,
brought
but-
and the price, aside from this letter, I thought that when they first corresponded, they did include an amount, but that's not in this.
I don't think we've ever had a number.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, their request was not, their request was not itemized. What's in the contract or
What was the
agreement with them
bill
is
for that
is
trip
what it can be
they
used
took?
for, but it's not itemized saying
But it
3
all
trips,
depends on where
this
they're
much per
going.
trip.
Right, I feel like it would be helpful if Judy could just say, we would like to request $1,000.
Additional.
Right.
Or whatever they need to get them up to the 3 trips or whatever.
to
Yeah, now
add
the
an
person
additional
here
trip.
number.
did say an amount, did say that she was thinking it was 3,000. But
Well,
I think
she's
we
just
should
saying,
get it.
you know, I think $2,000 would be nice, it's kind of what Teresa was saying, but it wasn't connected to any particular expense.
Right.
You know, not, it wasn't a projected expense, it was just like, oh, can we have some of the, it was a, can we, you know, we went 2 years without spending the money that was allocated. Can we have some of it now?
Right, but that money doesn't exist anymore.
We got.
Well, not really. I mean, if you don't spend it, it doesn't, you know, what we do is an appropriation,
Okay.
and you can spend up to that appropriation, but you get reimbursed.
About 2,000.
If you don't spend it, you don't spend it. It goes into the fund balance, and
Right.
that's why, you know, it's in the fund balance, it's not in the budget.
Right, that's what I
We
mean.
add an
That's-
additional $2,000.
Hmm.
I propose that we add an additional $2,000.
Where would it come from?
Not sure.
Yeah, that's what we have, because it's not in the budget, let's figure out where it would come
Okay.
from.
Well, then let's figure that out and come back.
Yeah, I think two things that would be appropriate. One would be to know what to say. Well, we'll think about it, but you know, what do you want to use the money for? Can you be specific about?
To help fray the cost, yeah, that was,
Yes, but what was
But the-
specific was about how much.
I would really like to see something itemized, because
Yeah.
we're taking the money from somewhere else.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
I
I think
feel
it's
like we
fair.
need to be able to say,
yeah,
we gave them this amount of money, which went towards this,
Yeah.
this, and this.
yeah.
I mean, I think it is fair to say we want to know the cost of the bus and the distance. I mean, it would be one thing if they said, well, we want to go to Florida versus we want to go to, you know, like the last trip where the one coming happens to be where I think it's hysterical, but the trip is going to be where I had my very first job as a 14-year-old. I couldn't believe it. It really is. Anyway, and that's close. It's a 2.5-hour ride
yeah, it does make a
versus,
difference how far you're going.
right.
Yeah.
Like if they said they want to go to Toronto, I'll go,
Mhm.
but I don't think we'll pay for it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so to come up with a number, like maybe with,
Okay.
to
so
explain.
Need more information?
Just to come up with, can you give us an expense sheet for somehow, I think what you're asking for is an accounting of what has happened, so we understand maybe the cost of a trip this year. I don't know, we don't know anything about what these trips cost.
I guess I'm more interested in what they want to do, how much do they want, and what do they want to do with
Okay.
it?
That's pretty simple.
Yeah, because what I'm getting out of them right now, is it'd be nice if they gave us more money.
Right,
We had this money, we didn't, you know, we didn't spend in those years past, but we just have some of that. And the answer is, well, no, because it's not in the budget, but we might be able to pull some money from elsewhere in the budget for a specific purpose, if you tell us what the specific purpose is, like, we'd like to make a trip to so-and-so, but we don't have enough money to cover it, and here's how much more it would cost to do it. And then I would be saying, okay, we'll figure out how we can come up
I
with
mean,
it.
it was within the last month or so, it was a trip bill from them.
Yes, right.
Anyway.
Wait, you can almost, I mean, one possibility to say, so multiply that times 3 or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah, but we don't know whether that's
No, they want to
representative
add
or not.
additional trip. It doesn't mean that they wanna, you know, add it, you know.
I think what they're saying is that they came up short to be able to even do 3, and if you pay for 2 and have some left over, but not enough for another trip.
Okay, all right, well, let's find out what they want
Yeah.
so
and figure out where it would come from.
Joel, are you able to contact them to ask for an accounting?
I got Marge's contact information. I don't have.
Teresa suggested that we ask Judy.
Yeah, we need to know how to contact
Oh, I have all those email apps.
her.
They're in the senior, anybody who gets a senior email has them. You gotta be.
Yeah, you want to contact them? Sure. Just tell them we want
Yep, I'll do it.
specific.
And then we have to find it.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
we got 5 minutes.
well, we could talk more about the, derelict and abandoned buildings thing, but
We could adjourn early.
we could also adjourn.
Wow.
You want to pick that next time? If so, then why don't we meet?
We just say publicly that we are.
We could do that, yeah. We'll be on the agenda for next time.
It is a big deal. Yeah. It is a big, I hear about that from
Oh, yeah.
one person all the
Yeah.
time too. When are you gonna do something?
Yeah, and a
Forgot, so I
couple
had
things,
three people call me.
yeah. there's a couple of things that we could do, and a couple of things that we already are looking into, which is the Restore New York funds can be used to address some of these issues if we have a willing property owner. So we're gonna have to contact some of these people and say, like the one in Michigan Hollow, you know,
Yeah.
you know, what is it money that's keeping you from doing something or what?
Maybe the one on Comfort Road, which is rather historic.
How about the barn?
You know,
Oh, the barn, that looked so hopeless. Oh, it was looking really pretty. Anyway,
beautiful building.
that seems like a, seriously, a little tiny article for a little section that, for the newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We can do that.
I was looking at her to see whether it could raise her eyebrows or not at me. Short thing about where the money could come from. I think it's a positive thing.
Well, the big issue is if we move in the definition, in direction of forcing the issue, which we have very few options. And they usually run in the direction of demolition.
I know, and that's,
And then it's a policy question, which is why it's here. It's not just enforcement. And if it comes to that, then we have to front the money.
right.
It's a lien on the property, which you may or may not recover when the property is foreclosed on in the event that they don't pay their taxes.
Right.
So we've done this before in the past. In the past, the county used to reimburse us. And then when the property went to foreclosure, they would make themselves whole if they could from the proceeds and then, pocket whatever else they got. But in the past, it was always on small properties, which are worth less after you tear the building down than they're worth with the building there. And worth not a whole lot of money, so that you end up costing you more than, costs more to tear the building down than the property is worth after you're done doing it, basically. So in that case, we'd be doing it at public service, but at public expense.
Yeah.
And we have to decide how much money to want to throw at something like that.
Fine grant. Fine grant.
When then, and then I'd far rather try to fix places up than tear them down. If it can be done, but if there's some of them when the roof's caving in already and the building's falling down, it's like the one next door here is pretty far gone.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.
Why don't you let me know sometimes?
Okay.
Thank you all for,
Wait.
Okay.
in the Zoom audience for being here.
Okay.